Marty, one of the wonderful things about this movie is its sense of anarchistic dark comedy, which reminds me so much of your earlier films like After Hours and King of Comedy.
I didn't think I could bring myself around to dealing with that world again in terms of in a new, I'll put it this way, in a new structure or a new style or a style that was extending the old style. How would I extend that? How would we project it forward, you see? How would we make it something that would be special and different from the other styles that were developed in Goodfellas and Casino, for example? The style in Goodfellas and Casino is one thing. The black comedy of the dark comedy of After Hours and King of Comedy is another. Maybe they blend the two.
Leo, this project has been something you've been working on since 2007.
That was the ability to really push the envelope with this and not censor it. Look, I was fascinated with doing something like a modern day Caligula, you know, the darker nature of these guys, not necessarily on Wall Street, because the more I researched this, it wasn't necessarily about Wall Street. It was about something that's in our very culture, you know, the attitude of these guys, the need to incessantly consume as much as possible with complete disregard for anyone except, you know, themselves. You know, doing a film with a lead character like this who is so dismissive to everyone and everything. I mean, there's some key moments in this film that Jonah keeps talking about where he goes, well, you know, she blew everybody in the office, and anyway, he killed himself, which was Stratton's first suicide. So anyway, and then you move on with the picture. It's just like this. There are these characters that just keep pushing forward, and we don't see the wake of their destruction. They just keep pushing forward, and to get a film of that nature financed, I think at any time frame, especially now, is incredibly difficult. We did get it financed. You know, at about 5 or 6 years ago, but it fell apart, and there was some struggles with it, and it wasn't really until, you know, our collaborators and financiers at Red Granite came in and said, look, we feel like there's a marketplace for films like this, and we want you guys to have complete, you know, artistic freedom to push the boundaries with it, because that's what's going to make it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it really is being honest to the material, and we made a number of films over the years. Friends of mine here, sitting here, know that we had to fight for the material in areas that we shouldn't have had to, I think. And so, you know, you try to be honest with it. I guess it's not for everyone, you know, it's something that everyone may not agree with, but you have to be as straightforward to the material as possible and as few restrictions as possible.
I've never been in an environment where you felt safer and had a barrier around you to be as honest and reckless at the same time. And that was something that I hope from now on I get to be around as much as possible. And that was a beautiful thing to get to walk into. Honestly, my indication from Marty that the scene was going well is when I could hear him laughing from behind the monitors. So we'd be improvising and I'd be thinking in my head, I probably sound like an idiot right now. I must be saying something really stupid. And then I'd hear Marty laugh, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm on the right track. It's good. And so I'd keep going down that road until I hear the laughing stop, and then I think, okay, change tact a little bit. And, no, we sat down and spoke about it a little bit to begin with, particularly the more racier scenes, so that we were both on the same page about where we're going to... And funnily enough, I was the one... I thought I walked into the meeting thinking that I was going to have to really fight to keep my clothes on, and by the end of it, I was like, no, I think she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't be having underwear on then. She wouldn't do that. She just wouldn't. That doesn't make sense. So actually, I was the one fighting to...
Well, it was a matter, too, of saying, really, I said, I just need the freedom to be able to do what I want. Doesn't mean we're going to use it.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean we're going to use it. Yeah.
And, well, if you're going to trust any director with those sort of scenes, it's going to be Marty. So.
And you did mention King of Comedy, and I keep referencing this because I remember seeing a documentary on King of Comedy, or footage from King of Comedy, where a lot of the actors would get together and take the material and improvise around around the scene, and then on the day we'd re-improvise that. And that was the feel of this. It was a constant, there's not many directors that will, stay with actors and try to get something from their characterization of these people, even if it's not essential to the structure of the plot. And that's what's so great about what Marty does and his process. If he feels like, ultimately the characters become the plot, and if he feels like something's going to happen there, even if it's not essential to the building blocks of getting to the ending, he'll stick with it all day long. And I remember asking about Goodfellas over and over again, and how he got that famous scene with Joe Pesci saying, "What am I, a clown? What am I here to abuse?" He said that wasn't even in the script. The guys just got together and they all started talking. But that was the feel of this movie as well. We weren't beholden to a specific plot structure. It was the characterization of these people. But those speeches, yes, that was something that I'd been thinking about for 6 years. There were some of the most brilliantly written speeches I'd ever read. There were these greed-fueled, Braveheart cries to battle, but he was influencing everybody to go screw as many people over as possible. And there was a huge build-up for those scenes, and I'd thought about them for such a long period of time that the day I actually arrived on set, I had strep throat and couldn't do any of them.
Classic.
So we had to wait.
I actually had the real Jordan come into CAA, and I filled the room up with a bunch of assistants, and I asked him to recreate one of those speeches for me. So I got to see it play out. So I was really inspired by the real guy. I mean, I got to see him stand in front of a room full of people. He's really filled with trepidation at first. It took him about a minute or two to warm up. Once he got going, he is really one of the most gifted public speakers I've ever seen, and just started ripping, and I was praying that my digital recorder was working, and got some of it on tape and wrote a lot of things down. I just observed him and then recreated that, some of his own words, mine included, and just sort of shaped that whole those whole speeches together. And I, of course, you read it back to yourself as you're writing it, and I thought I was doing a pretty good impression of Leo in my own head. He's so much better at being Leonardo DiCaprio than I am. And when you see it, I was like, oh my God. It just goes to such a new level, and it's just incredible to watch.
Leo, you also met Jordan Belfort. Did that influence your performance at all?
Very much so. Mm-hmm. Yes, I spent many months with him, and what was so refreshing about him was the fact that, look, he knew he made a lot of mistakes. This was a very dark period in his life, so he was incredibly candid and always forthright and always honest. A lot of times we'd be talking about specific scenes, and he would say it was like that, but actually it was 10 times worse, and I'm going to tell you why. And I really had a worse intention. I really wanted to screw that guy over. So, all that insight, and especially a lot of the sales stuff. I mean, he took me through beat by beat, the lowering of the voice, how you manipulate somebody. It's all a part of, the way we depict him at the end of this movie is what he's doing right now. His life is much different now, and he's trying to make amends with the past and repair what he did. But it was amazing to work with somebody and be able to literally call somebody sometimes in between takes and say, "I have a question." You just don't get that.
Ellen, you've been working with Marty since 1989 with some very large ensemble cast. This, you told me, has 110 different speaking parts in it.
Probably. I mean, Goodfellas was a huge cast, and Casino was a huge cast, really huge. And Gangs of New York had a huge cast. So this wasn't quite as scary in the same way as those were. But this was a really large cast, and I would say that probably the biggest challenge was making sure that we got each of the brokerage firms and the groups kind of within, the young people. After the Forbes article comes out, we needed like the young, hungry people who were coming in, and then that first, Matthew McConaughey, where he is, and having that upper crust feeling for that group of brokers, and then, of course, in the garage, and, they all were very specific faces and types, and so, we really work at making sure that we're getting each feeling right.
Yes, well, Marty wanted it to be ferocious, the movie, and have an incredible thrust to it. But then when we started getting these wonderful comic scenes, you know, a scene like with Matthew McConaughey and Leo, I mean, how can you not let that scene run? It's so beautifully written by Terry and so beautifully acted. And so it was a little odd that we would, you know, be tearing straight ahead and then screech to a stop for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And but that was the way that it was unique to this movie, don't you think, Marty?
Yeah,
I
that's what we were trying. Once we saw that happen, let's keep going that way. Let's see how far we could go, and to break those rhythms and not have a traditional continuity in a sense, or traditional narrative, as much as possible.
Yes, because plot is not what this film is about.
No
Marty
plot.
hates plot anyway.
Well, I like another movie.
The biggest challenge actually was having hundreds of men in suits and shirts and ties and sort of somehow trying to sort of create differences in their characters when basically they're all wearing the same thing. And a lot of that comes down to the ties, actually. And it's it's the ties and how the ties change through the periods, from the 80s where they're really garish, and then through the early 90s they stay a bit like the 80s, and then they get more conservative as we go along. I arrive with a bunch of clothes and we try them all on. We go through loads of different kinds of shirts, loads of different kinds of pants, and the glasses and everything. And after a while the character develops. The character comes out of that. You put something on, you put the high-waisted baggy jeans on with the really horrible socks and the shoes and the shirt, and then suddenly someone goes, "This is it. This is the character. This is where it's going to go, and it's going to have all those really nasty colours all mashed up together."
And trying to look waspy.
And and it was with the sweater over the shoulder thing, the pastel coloured sweaters. Yeah.
I wore some of Sandy's old clothes.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
What were they?
Which outfits? Which I mean,
Come on,
I
tell
did
which
actually.
outfits. Come on.
No, I did actually go into my loft and drag out my old 80s and 90s clothes. And
Postcard
actually,
dress?
Yeah. She wears
The
the
blue one?
postcard dress.
The dress that I'm wearing when we're on the boat in Italy.
Yeah.
When
That?
Aunt Emma
That's
died.
That says Sicily right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Marty gave the tick of
That's
approval.
right.
Yep.
And actually, I've got an embarrassing confession. One of the
Yes.
prostitutes.
I know. Tell them.
The scene of the girl with Leo and the candle.
Let's talk about that
Venice.
soon.
Venice was her name.
Yeah, that was my outfit.
Are you serious? Was it really?
Fine. It still fits.
Wow. That is
Bravo.
fantastic.